Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. We are here to kick off a long-awaited vlog for myself, and this is going to be like strictly a reading updates vlog. I don't think there's going to be any B-roll in this, so whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for you, who knows, but that's what it's going to be. And I'm going to be doing a vlog of reading books that my mother-in-law has sent me. So I've talked about this several times in the past on the channel. My mother-in-law also loves to read, which is amazing, and she sends me books that she enjoys after she finishes them, which is doubly amazing. So I'm very appreciative to her for sending me all of these books. And some of them have been piling up a bit. I haven't been getting to them as quickly as I would like. So I'm going to read 4 of them in this vlog today. So let's go ahead and go over the books that I'm going to be reading. First up, we have Lessons in Chemistry. This is by Bonnie Garmus, and this is published by whom? This is published by Doubleday, and this is a very popular book, so I'm excited to get my own take on it. This is historical fiction, and it takes place in the 60s. Is it the 60s? Yes, it takes place in the 60s, and it follows a chemist named Elizabeth, and she has a very like go-getter personality, very determined, is fighting a lot of the sexism at the time in her field and kind of just in the workforce for women in general. And she ends up on a food show, and it's sort of meant to be like a food science, like she's using chemistry to make great dishes, but she ends up on a very well-renowned and beloved food show. That's a little bit of what's going on here. I have already started this, so we'll get into it a little bit more in a second. The next book that I'll be reading for this vlog is Wrong Place, Wrong Time. This is by Gillian McAllister, and this is published by William Morrow. This is a thriller that has a speculative element to it. So you follow a woman who is looking out of her house one day, and her teenage son has a confrontation with someone that she doesn't know, and she runs out to try and intervene, and her son ends up stabbing this person and they die. That all happens from the very beginning. It's in the blurb, so that's not a spoiler. Then she goes to bed that night after her son has been arrested, and she wakes up at the start of that day again. Now, she doesn't have a groundhog situation per se. She starts going back in time, further and further back in time. So then she wakes up the day before that. Sometimes she'll skip long periods of time and wake up further in the past. So she feels like she needs to trigger something in the butterfly effect in order to make sure that her son doesn't go through with this murder. And she's trying to figure out everything she possibly can about why her son might have killed this person. So that is Wrong Place, Wrong Time. Also started this, so I'll give you an update in a second. The next one we have here is The Last to Vanish by Miranda. This one's published by Mary Sue Ricci Books, which I think is a part of Scribner. And this is another thriller. It's very much more of a like domestic classic thriller, I would say, than the previous one. This follows a woman who owns an inn in like a very mountainy, foresty town. And there has been several vanishings that have happened in that town in the past. I think maybe one might be related to her, I'm not quite sure. And then there is a journalist who comes to town to investigate some of the vanishings, and then that journalist disappears as well. And I think she gets roped into the case from there, not quite sure why. But yeah, I think this will be very traditional thriller. I've read some Miranda's in the past because my mother-in-law has sent me some in the past, and I have enjoyed them. So looking forward to this one for sure. And lastly, we have one of the first books that my mother-in-law ever sent me that I have not finished yet, and that is The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. This one is published by St. Martin's Press, and this is a beloved historical fiction about World War II. It follows 2 sisters who are entangled into the war in very different ways, and it follows both of their perspectives throughout the war. And I've heard that it's heart-wrenching, that I should be probably expecting to cry, so I'm prepared for that going in. And I rarely read historical fiction in general, particularly World War II historical fiction, even though I know there's so much of it. So I think it will be a very fun experience for me to kind of dive into this world that is so well read by lots of other people. And this one I'm particularly interested in because there is going to be a movie adaptation of this coming out, and it has Dakota and Elle Fanning, real life sisters, acting as the two sisters in this book. So I definitely want to see that when it comes out, so I want to read the book first. So those are the 4 books that I'll be reading for this video. As you can tell, my mother-in-law likes thrillers and historical fiction. I think those are her most read genres. She definitely reads some other stuff as well, but I think those are her go-tos. So this is very classic mother-in-law reading for me to do. So I'm very excited. I will go ahead and give you the first update of the couple that I have started. Firstly, I started Lessons in Chemistry. I am doing a buddy read of this with my friend Kat over at Kat Reads on Instagram. I'll link her Instagram page down below so you can go visit it. Probably due to me, we're reading this slowly, like throughout the month, more slowly than she would probably read it because she's a quicker reader than me. But I'm excited to be able to have some interaction with her around this book. We send notes back and forth. So I've read the first 100 pages and I have some thoughts so far. Firstly, I think that I love all of the feminist themes that are happening in here and how it's essentially like a takedown of all the misogyny and sexism that women had and have to still deal with in the workplace. And kind of just in their lives in general. I will say there are trigger warnings for this off the bat for sexual assault, so know that going in. It's also trying to comment on just the prevalence of sexual assault towards women and violence towards women. So yeah, I am appreciating all of those things and definitely agree and resonate with all of those things. Some things that I'm not loving about it thus far is sort of how heavy-handed it can be with some of those themes, and it's feeling a little tropey to me. So like very convenient, like wrapped up in a bow kind of plot things. Like there's a romance from the very beginning. It's very perfect in a lot of ways. And there's also just a lot of like movie magic going on is how I would call it. Like things perfectly lining up or very coincidentally happening to make the plot move forward in the way that the author is wanting it to, which I'm not loving that. I know that like in some ways, like when I read romance, I can definitely get behind that, but I'm having a harder time getting behind it in this. Other thing that I'm not loving so far is the characters feel very two-dimensional to me so far. I am just in the first 100 pages though, so there's still time for there to be character arcs, but they are feeling a little bit flat, a little bit like caricatures that I've seen a lot before. But I will say right before where I'm at, there is a big twist that just happened and I did not see it coming. And I am intrigued of how it will play out from there. So I won't say what it is, obviously, but yeah, that definitely got me sucked a little bit back in. So excited to continue moving forward with this, and overall having a good enough time with it for the time being. So next up, I have also read basically half of Wrong Place, Wrong Time already, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm having so much fun with this. It is so fast-paced and quick to read. I'm just flying through it. I started it yesterday and I'm already halfway through. So yeah, this is definitely about the butterfly effect. I think that that's even come up several times throughout the novel, and it's really realistic, I think, in some of the questions that the main character, what is her name? I think her name's Jen. I can't see it in the blurb, but I'm pretty sure her name's Jen. I think like the questions that Jen is having and the thoughts that she's having of like, how do I convince people that this is actually happening to me? Like, what's the point of what's happening to me? And trying to work within the rules of her going back in time is really fascinating and really relatable. I feel like those are things that people would actually think about and question and try to do. So it's so interesting discovering everything with her, because she is finding out that she's very much in the dark about some things about her family life. And it's very fascinating to try and get to explore different days again with fresh eyes and with a new lens to think about things through. And I'm just really enjoying it so far. There has already been one plot twist that I think it's like a half plot twist that I think there's going to be a further plot twist down the line that I might know what's happening, but I really enjoyed it so far. And I think this is definitely a book where even if you can figure some stuff out ahead of time, I don't think that will hinder the enjoyment of it at all. So yeah, really loving this so far. I have heard what I think might be a spoiler. I'm not quite sure. I've just heard a category of what might be in here, and I am a little bit on the lookout for it, but who knows? I'm not going to say it here just in case it is. So yeah, very much enjoying my experience with this. Can't wait to read more. I will probably finish this in the next day or two. And yeah, I will leave you with those updates, and I'll check in with you probably once I finish this and start another one. I think once I finish this, I'm going to start on the next thriller, The Last to Vanish, and we'll see how I get on from there. So see y'all in a little bit. All right, we are back. And it has been a hot minute, I'm gonna be honest with you. So there are a lot of updates to get through in this one, so be prepared for a long-winded update. We're gonna be here a while. I'll try and do little zoomy inny and outies so you feel like you're having some type of fun and there's some type of movement happening, but no, it's gonna be long. So first off, let's start with this, because I did indeed finish it. So this is Wrong Place, Wrong Time. Before, I already told you, this was like just a second ago for you, that I was very much enjoying this, and I thought this was great. I get the hype with this. It is so engaging and entertaining. I think the aspect, kind of like the framing device of moving backwards in time is so brilliant, especially for a thriller, because the author sort of has free license to have you show up on any day they want, right? Because it's out of control of the character. Like, they just get to pick the days they want and then they are there. Like, it's a great way to plop the characters into a situation that you're wanting for the overall narrative without having to worry about like, is this believable of how they got there, all that type of stuff. So I thought that was very brilliant on the author's part, and it was just fascinating as a character study. And I do think, you know, while this is a thriller, kind of, it has like a mystery element, right? Because you're trying to figure out how the son came to kill this person, because it seems so out of character for him. So in some ways there's that mystery, but the thrilleriness aspect of it, like, I wouldn't say it's like a heart racing thriller. I don't really care about that. So I'm fine with it not feeling that way, like not feeling super tense all the time. But it's really about this family, mainly about like her and her husband as a couple, even more than her relationship with her son, although that does come up a lot as well. So it's just about this family and sort of understanding the butterfly effect and how actions have consequences, and we aren't even really fully aware of what the consequences are most of the time when we're making actions. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I felt like, you know, I was able to suspend my disbelief for a lot of things, and it felt pretty natural to do so. I wasn't taken out of the story, and just really, really enjoyed it. So would highly recommend Wrong Place, Wrong Time. People are telling the truth when they're saying that they're loving this. So that is that one. Now, let's talk about the hard thing, okay? Let's talk about the hard thing. Let's talk about lessons in chemistry. Now, I have made it to page 148, 149. So, yeah. And I'm DNFing it. I know. Please do not hate me. I'm DNFing this. Look, I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum. I get why people like this book. So I'm going to briefly talk about why I'm personally DNFing it, and then I will also talk about the things that I like about this book and the things that I feel like people will enjoy. So the reason why I'm personally DNFing this, and y'all, I tried because I've said I'm also doing this as a buddy read. So I had a lot of motivation to finish it. And multiple times I was like, I need to DNF this. And I was like, let me just push through one more chapter. And I did that several times. And now I'm just like, look, it's done. So I'm DNFing this because I personally don't like how heavy-handed it is and how like stereotypical and tropey it is. We'll start with that. It also for me is hard. It doesn't feel realistic at all. And I understand that stories don't have to be realistic, right? But for me, this like historical fiction being not based in reality totally is just something that I'm not enjoying. It's hard for me to suspend my disbelief for that. I think if I read historical fiction, I do want it to feel real in most regards, and that's a personal preference, 100%. So that's something I'm struggling with. I just feel like this is mainly about the character of Elizabeth Zott, right? And I just think that she's a little bit 2D for me. Like she's so stereotypical of like the go-getter woman who's fighting against the patriarchy in this time period, right? I love that for her, and it's just not something that I enjoy reading about because I already know how it's going to end up. It's like, regardless of the actual plot, I know exactly how it's going to want to make me feel at the end. I can feel it pulling my emotional strings, and I feel like it's very obvious the things it's wanting me to feel, and I just like that to feel more seamless in a book. So again, all of that is just, my own feelings. It's not objectively that I think this book is bad. I actually think this book is well written. Things I like about this book, I love all the themes. It's very feminist. It's very much like kind of talking about how complicated motherhood is, and that it's okay to not want to be a mother, and it's okay to be really career driven as a woman, and like all these types of things, like showing a strong, intelligent woman, right? And I love that. I think that's a lot of why people enjoy this, is they do really like following the main character, and that it's shining a light on some things that women might be feeling like they're forced into, and that it's okay if you don't want those things. So all of that makes sense. I get why people enjoy it. It is very emotional, so you're gonna feel a lot as you're reading it, and I think some people also love that as well. So I think this is well written. It's just not for me, so it's a DNF. So that is Lessons in Chemistry. I told you it's gonna be a long one because I also started and finished the last Vanish since I've last updated you. So my deepest apologies that I didn't give you any updates on this along the way. This one I enjoyed. I think it is good. And I really believe, and this is no shade when I'm saying this, I really believe that Miranda is like a really standard, dependable thriller writer. So are her books going to be my favorite books I've ever read? No, I don't think so. But can you always count on them to be fun and page turning and be well plotted? Yes, I do believe that you can depend on her for that. And this one is no different. So this one, as I said before, is taking place in a small town, which is Miranda's bread and butter. They all take place in small towns, and it follows a woman who is working at an inn that is sort of in her family. That's how she gets a job there. And there have been vanishings in this town in the past, some before she got there, some after. Now it kind of cuts to a new guest arriving at the inn, and she happens to recognize him as the brother of someone who was staying there like a year ago or something like that and went missing. So he's coming to the inn to sort of investigate on his own. He's not telling them that, but she knows because she recognizes him. This sort of sets her on a journey to learn more about the vanishings herself. She's always had some questions about it. There's been like lots of like rumors and rumblings throughout the town of what might have happened. And other people have speculated that this town has something wrong with it. Like there's something that people aren't telling us. So that's all very intriguing from the get-go. I do think this is slow to start. I think once I got around like 100 pages, then I was starting to get more and more invested in where the plot was going. And I think that you're in it for the plot with this one, right? So this does get very exciting. There are a few reveals in this book. Some I think are more obvious, and I'm okay with that. I don't really care. There was one though that fucking got me. I like gasped and was like, whoa. And the way that she wrote it was so good as well, because you're sort of like steamrolling through a very actiony part, and then it's like one sentence that is a twist. And because you, like one sentence, you read it so quick, right? So it's almost like you read it and then it takes a second for your brain to register it. And you're like, what? Oh my God, I can't believe I just read that. So I definitely had that moment, which I think is like a classic thrillery moment to have. And I very much enjoyed that. So yeah, I think this was really fascinating. I love the atmosphere. It's like a snowy mountain town. It's right off of the Appalachian Trail. So it has a lot to do with like hikers. So the vanishings have been connected to hiking, like people supposedly getting lost out in the wood, going out in bad conditions, that type of stuff. So you get all these hiking little elements. I love hiking, so that was fun for me to read. And it's very claustrophobic because of the weather conditions. So loved all of it, loved the small town vibes. I just think, yeah, again, really dependable standard thriller writer. So, and I mean that in a good way. So that is The Last to Vanish. That's that one. And because we got to get all the books in here, I have also started the Kristin Hannah book. This is The Nightingale. And I'm really early days in this book. Like, I think I've read the first 3 chapters. Yeah, I've read the first 3 chapters. I'm like 15 pages in. So I will say, and really initial thoughts. So I can give you updates on at least one book along the way. It starts with a flash forward, which I do enjoy. Curiously, this also starts with a flash forward. I don't know if that's a really common thing to happen in historical fiction, but it's happening thus far. So it starts with a flash forward, and the flash forward shows one of the main character, maybe. I know it's about 2 sisters, but I think the main character is Vianne. She's one of the sisters. She's the older sister. And it's a flash forward of her in her home. You know that she is very old at this point and is sort of in failing health. And she wants to revisit some stuff that she has stored away in her attic before she needs to leave her home. And that sort of sets her on a flashback journey to be thinking about the time during the war, because this takes place during World War II. So I think the flash forward is interesting because I think you always kind of want to know, okay, how did we get there? But yeah, I'm curious. I'm intrigued thus far, and I will check in with you. This one I'm actually going to check in with you. So I'll check in when I get halfway and see how I feel about it then. But yeah. Thanks for sticking with me for this very long update, and I'll see you in just a second. Bye. All right, we are back. I'm here to give you an update on The Nightingale. This is just the dust jacket. I have the book right here. So I'm not quite halfway. I'm on page 175. So I'm like almost halfway. We're like very close. And So far, I'm definitely enjoying the book. I wouldn't say I'm loving it, but I'm like intrigued enough to continue going, which is good. More on the initial setup, we kind of have two sisters, like I said before. One, the younger sister, is very ostentatious, independent, naive, and sort of has some questionable behavior. She's very much like fight the man, like I'm gonna do what I want type of vibes. And older sister is much more cautious and timid, more dependent upon people, and has more traditional values, sort of just like wants a softer life, right? Which, no problems with that either, but a very common kind of setup between two main characters, I would say, to show some of the differences between them. Now, it also gets into a little bit of the backstory about their parents, and this is all in the very beginning, so it's not a spoiler, but their mom dies when they're pretty young, and their father is basically devastated by the death of his wife and feels he can no longer care for them. He turns to alcoholism first for a while, and they sort of see that, and then he abandons them, drops them off with nuns, I think, and they're very torn up over this, like major abandonment issues, like still to this day, and feel like he just didn't want them, which again, it's like, I get it, and like seen that before too. So I will say that as far as the writing goes, it's very descriptive. I think that she does a really good job of painting a scene. So it's very effective when she does it. I do think it's happening too often. Like, I think this book is too long. They're constantly moving around, and I just don't think every setting needs to be described in the same level of detail when we're never gonna be there again. We're just passing through. So I think the page length could come down, but like that's not to say that the writing isn't good. I think there's just too much of it. So that's a little bit on the writing thus far. Yeah, I think the plot is interesting enough. I don't think anything is surprising, and it doesn't need to be, I guess. It feels very like standard fare for a World War II historical fiction. But again, I'm like just around halfway, so who knows what's going to happen at this point. I think it could surprise me. And the whole like pitch of this book is the sisters end up reacting to the war and having like circumstances thrown at them by the war very differently, and that is taking shape. I won't get into that, so I don't give away spoilers, although I'm not really sure it is, but I won't say it anyway. So we're in that phase and sort of waiting to see where it goes from here. So I'm intrigued enough to continue. And yeah, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm probably just gonna read the rest of the book before I check in with you next, and then just give my overall review of it. So yeah, unless like something crazy happens and I feel the need to pop on to talk about it. But yeah, that's the book thus far. So we'll see how it goes. Bye. Okay, I have finally finished The Nightingale, and I like literally just finished it. I was shedding tears at the end, and yeah, I'm here to give you my final little review of how I felt about this one. So I think the last time I caught up with you, I was like almost halfway in, and I will say that halfway mark, like right around 200 pages, really turns the tide in the book. I feel like the plot very much picks up the pace from 200 pages onward, and I liked that section a lot more. I'll say I loved that section. I think the ending, particularly the last like 75 pages, were absolutely phenomenal. They were so good, and had a great mix of like plot, character arcs, and emotional investment from the reader, let's call it. So yeah, this book overall I very much enjoyed. I think that some of the things I said in the beginning I still hold true. Like my couple of complaints about this would be that I think in the beginning there's too much description. You sort of get bogged down a little bit in it. I think it could have been edited down just a little bit. I still think the writing is beautiful, but I think that there was just like too much description in the beginning for the amount of plot that we were getting. So I do still feel that way. And I do still feel like there were some kind of like movie magic or book magic, in this case, things where like it was overly convenient in certain areas to kind of get the plot where it needed to be, and you could pick those out, and it kind of, in some ways, that brought me out of it just a tiny bit. But overall, I think that this hit all of the beats that it was trying to hit. It was very emotional and harrowing, and like had a very optimistic tone of love at its core, and that this idea that like love is really what matters. Like love is what carries you through, whether that's romantic love or platonic love or familial love or whatever that might be. And I'm a sucker for that, as I'm sure most people are suckers for that. Like it just feels good to have that story kind of all up in your feels, and I really enjoyed that. So yeah, and thought like from that 200 page mark on, absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. The one other thing I'll say is this follows multiple perspectives. So you're getting both of the sisters' perspectives. And for the most part, kind of leading up to those 200 pages, and even a little past that, I really wanted more of Vianne's story. You get less of her story compared to Isabel's, and Vianne was really the story that I found more intriguing. Isabel's is very intriguing and plot heavy, and I get why it's there, but I just really wanted more of Vianne. So I kept being like, oh, let's get back to Vianne's story. Let's get back to Vianne's story. The closer and closer we got to the end, as they start coming back together, I didn't have that feeling, but there was definitely a longing for more Vianne for me for the majority of the book. I just found her character fascinating and wanted more time with her. And I think I found Isabel's character a little bit more 2D than Vianne. I mean, she's still fully fleshed out, but like Vianne felt like the fuller, realer character to me, and I wanted to be with her a little bit more. So yeah, overall, I thought this was fantastic. I get why so many people love it. I can't wait to see the movie. I think this is going to be a fantastic movie. I can add to the voices of people recommending this. If you like really heart-wrenching World War II fiction, then I think this could be a great book for you if you haven't already read it, if you're one of the few. But yeah, can't wait to see the movie. Really enjoyed this. And we have made it through all 4 books for this reading books that my mother-in-law has gifted me vlog. And I think this has been such a fantastic journey for me. In some ways, these books have taken me a little bit out of my typical comfort zone of reading, of what I naturally gravitate for. And I've really enjoyed reading these, and it's been so fun. And I feel like it has given me some insight into not just my mother-in-law's reading, but sort of, yeah, some other aspects of reading that I really enjoy that I don't often get to. So it has been such a fun experience. I'm very grateful to my mother-in-law for sending me these and all the other books that she has sent me over the years. And I'll definitely have to do a round 2 of this at some point. But yeah, I also think a fun thing for me is that it really, like, this really encapsulates my mother-in-law's reading, and it was so fun to get to read books that she's also read and enjoyed. And I can't wait to talk to her more about them. So yeah, these are the 4 books that I read for this vlog. If I had to rank them for you, I think my ranking is going to be, let's see. So I think my ranking is this. So this was my favorite, Wrong Place, Wrong Time. Obviously, I DNF'd Lessons in Chemistry, so it was my least favorite. I still very much get why people enjoy this book. But yeah, this is the ranking. I absolutely loved doing this little project, and I hope you enjoyed watching along. So I will see you all in the next one. Bye.